Good evening and welcome. My name is Keith Cole. I'm the Executive Director for the Wolf River Conservancy. We want to welcome you all here tonight for our very special presentation. Of course, tonight is part of our Wolf River Restoration Series. It's our third lecture of our Wolf River Restoration Series of 2021. The Wolf River Restoration Series is designed to highlight the conservation work and mission of the Wolf River Conservancy. And we do that through signature events such as projects, tree plantings, litter removal, and of course, tonight's educational lecture. We're so excited tonight. We have over 225 participants or registrants, tonight, which is a record. So we know you have an interest in tonight's topic, as we all should. To learn more about this weekend's service projects, which celebrates World Water Day, during the evening in the chat box, you'll see some links that take you to the registrations. And you can also go to the wolfriver.org activity calendar as well. Tonight's program is designed to raise the awareness of World Water Day, which is celebrated each March 22nd of each year. World Water Day is a global celebration of the importance and value of clean drinking water. And of course, we in Memphis are very fortunate. Memphis and West Tennessee and Shelby County are very fortunate to have an abundance of clean drinking water, but of course we cannot take it for granted. And so that's why and how the work of the Wolf River Conservancy, our land conservation work, is so valuable. Our strategic conservation plan is designed to protect wetlands and floodplains that are part of the recharge of the Memphis sand aquifer. And to date, since 1985, we protected over 18,000 acres of critically important wetlands and floodplains. And our board is committed to continuing to protect land long into the future for future generations. Recently, you've heard about the Bahalia pipeline project, and the Conservancy, of course, is in opposition of that plan, and we've communicated that with our local officials with our opposition. Before we get started, we must acknowledge our generous sponsors for our Wolf River Restoration Series. Our presenting sponsor of the entire series is Brother International. And Brother International is a longtime friend and supporter of the Conservancy, and we're so pleased that they've chosen to be our presenting sponsor for the Wolf River Restoration Series this year. If you don't know Brother International, they've been in Memphis since the mid-1980s, and they are very sustainable in their practices. We've visited with them several times at their locations, and they certainly know the value of taking care of our environment. I think Vicki Berry may be in the audience. She's one of our good friends from Brother International. So thank you, brother, for your sponsorship. Along with that, we want to acknowledge our benefactors. We have Bank of America, Buckman, the Crawford Howard Private Family Foundation, FedEx, the Griffles Foundation, the Hyde Family Foundation, International Paper, and Reen Container Technologies. Thank you all benefactors for all the support you provide the Wolf River Conservancy throughout the year. And of course, all of our supporters and volunteers are critically important to us in delivering on our mission each day, the protection and enhancement of the Wolf River and its watershed as a sustainable natural resource. You play a very important role. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to a message from Don Cummings, the president of Brother International.
Hello, I'm Don Cummins, President of Brother International. At Brother, our mission is to live our at your side promise and to simplify and enrich the lives of our customers, employees, and communities. For many years, we have stood with you at local in-person volunteer events to protect and steward important landscapes and healthy habitats. It's with great pride that we continue to support the Wolf River Conservancy in new ways by presenting the 2021 Wolf River Restoration Series. This series of events is designed to provide fun, interactive, and educational programs dedicated to restoring and conserving our ecosystem. We hope you enjoy today's program.
Now, thank you, Don. Now, a few housekeeping details before we begin this presentation. For copyright reasons, we ask you not to record tonight's program. Also, if you have questions during the evening, please use the chat box feature. Our Director of Education, Kathy Justice, will be monitoring the chat box throughout the evening. And at the end of the presentation, she'll be asking the questions of our presenter as you submit those to her. It is my pleasure now to introduce to you our presenter for this evening, Dr. Brian Waldron, the Director of the Center for Applied Earth Science and Engineering Research, also known as CSER, which is located in part of the University of Memphis. He is an Associate Professor of Civil Engineering in the Herf College of Engineering. Dr. Waldron is one of the leading groundwater experts in the state of Tennessee, and his research focuses primarily on groundwater migration and contaminant transport. His research is multidisciplinary, crossing many departments and academic institutions. Dr. Waldron holds 3 degrees in civil engineering, a BS and MS from the University of Memphis, and a PhD from Colorado State University. But perhaps for us, one of the most important distinctions that Brian Waldron has is he is a longtime friend of the Wolf River Conservancy, having served on our board several years ago, but always a great resource to us and always a good friend and helper. So help us welcome Dr. Brian Waldron. Brian, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate it. And I want to thank the Wolf River Conservancy for having CSER present tonight and its sponsor brother. So thank you. I think I will share my screen and go through a presentation. Certainly, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. My plan is to get through the presentation relatively quickly, hitting highlights, and that would afford us more time to answer questions that you may have. So thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. Let me share my screen. So hopefully everybody is able to see that. Let me make sure. Matt or Keith, y'all able to see the first slide?
We're good, yes.
Okay, cool, thank you. I just want to start, keep talking. Everybody's like, dude, there's nothing going on. So I want to talk about our groundwater system. I really title this A Critical Crossroads and a Second Opportunity to Secure Our Future. And I'll discuss what that means when I say second opportunity. I am with CSER with the University of Memphis. We have an amazing team, amazing staff, without whom and the students, we would not exist. They really do a great job on investigating our water resources. We are not unaware of water situations around the world. In China, there's this thing called the North-South line. To the south, they have a lot of water, and to the north, they don't. And they are proposing building large pipelines from the south to move water to the north. Really a daunting engineering task, to say the least. You may have heard of Day Zero in Cape Town. That's when they were going to have no water. I mean, literally millions of people, no water, there's not a drop to drink. That got moved, actually. They had some recent rains over the last year or two and has moved that date out, but still under the threat. In Brazil, they have a lot of water. It's in the rainforest, but their biggest issue is contamination. They don't treat the wastewater. So, a large majority of the waterways are polluted by wastewater. But you bring it here to the Southeast United States, we have our own issues. We deal with our own situations. And Memphis is not foreign to problems that we have faced. Some more recent have come to our attention. But, really our interest in water happened many years ago. And it really stems from the yellow fever epidemics. Memphis had a number of fever epidemics that hit our area, but it was really the epidemic of 1878 that got us. About 5,000 deaths and 25,000 people fled Memphis. Now, back then, 25,000 people leaving Memphis was half the population. And to that degree, the state of Tennessee removed our charter as a city. So we were under a huge amount of stress. We were actually obtaining our drinking water from the Wolf River. But in 1886, there was this guy, R.C. Graves. He owned an ice company downtown. And he had this idea of drilling a well. Why he did, we don't know. But he did. He started drilling and he hit this thick clay layer and he didn't stop. He kept going. And when he penetrated that clay layer, he hit the Memphis Aquifer, and it was under so much pressure, it flowed to the surface, like you see here in the photo. And this eventually brought back Memphis. So it can easily be stated that Memphis exists because of our groundwater. That is why, why we are here. It's a wonderful natural resource. But how did it come about? How did we really get this great resource? Well, way back when, in Tennessee, if you've ever been out east, you go to the Smoky Mountains, which is the Appalachians. And the Appalachian Mountains actually swung down through Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and went into Texas, and rivers flow to the north. The continent, North American continent, was moving westward and went over this Bermuda hotspot, which is like a little lava plume up high. And we had a lot of fractures in our area that when it went over this plume, these lava kind of ballooned up the ground. And over time, it eroded. It would rise and erode and rise and erode. And eventually, due to the movement of the continent, we moved off that plume and the ground subsided. And this allowed sand and gravel, or sand and clay, to deposit itself in this area. But the continent kept moving, and eventually that same plume exists. It's actually forming the triangles of the Bermuda Triangle. That is why here in the Mid-South, if you're missing a lot of left socks, that's why. So it really is an interesting creation of our groundwater system. As I said, it deposited layers of sand and clay. The sand produced our aquifer systems, separated by layers of clay in the gray here in the figure. The clay serves two purposes. One, it pressurizes the water, like you saw in the photo where the water came up to the ground surface, but it also protects us from contamination. Where the clay is absent, such as to the east, called the recharge zone, the sands actually come up to the surface. You can go to Fayette County and, in the gully systems, kick the Memphis sand up with your feet. So that is where it is more prone to contamination because of the absence of clay, and it's not under pressure. That is our recharge zone. So we have, some issues that we face. They fall into two categories: quantity and quality. From a quantity standpoint, this embayment formation crosses portions of 8 states. That's a huge system. And the majority of that coverage is in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. And what I did is for each state of those three, you can see the percent of groundwater pooled within that blue area and the percent of surface water pulled within that blue area. Certainly a huge amount of reliance on groundwater in all of these states. In Tennessee, Shelby County is the largest consumer of groundwater, mainly for municipal and industrial use. But in Arkansas and Mississippi, they use a lot of groundwater, but it's primarily for agriculture. Interestingly, when you look at it from a quantity standpoint, we discussed this idea of a recharge zone. That's where the sands come up to the surface and the clay is absent, and you can kick the sand up with your feet, and when it rains, it goes right into the aquifer. It forms this blue band, this outcrop along West Tennessee. And that's why it's so important for what's going on, not just in Shelby County, but along West Tennessee and to us in Fayette County and Hardeman County, because that is our recharge zone. What's interesting is that, as you recall, I said this is a multi-state aquifer system. To the other side, to the west in Arkansas, that sand does not come up to the surface. As shown in the figure on the left, it's actually buried in the deposits of the Mississippi River as it flowed back and forth over time. So really, our recharge band in West Tennessee plays a huge role, not just for Tennessee, but for the other states, our sister states as well. That's why it's so important to understand our recharge and our quantity issues. But as I mentioned, there's another one, and that's quality. I mentioned this clay layer, that's confining clay layer, and it protects us from contamination. However, there are known locations in that clay layer where the clay is absent or very thin. We call that a breach. So why are we concerned about breaches? Well, when the clay is present and there's a potential for contamination, it is difficult for that contaminant to get down into our drinking water aquifer, the Memphis aquifer, because the clay protects us. But these naturally occurring breaches in the clay, due to our pumping, we can pull those contaminants down through the breach and into our drinking water supply. So this is why it's very concerning about these breaches and the quality issues that we face. So when you look at Shelby County, we have identified places where we believe breaches in this clay layer to be. Some are known, some are suspected. The gray area out to the east along the Shelby County, Fayette County borders are recharge zone. So what really identifies a breach? Well, the known breaches, we get lucky. We drilled a well. We found thin clay or no clay, and that's how we found it. The suspected breaches come from ancillary data. Could be from water levels that kind of like, why are they low in this area? There's no pumping. Well, it kind of acts like a funnel and goes through the breach. Maybe along a river, we see loss in the river when there shouldn't be. So, it's our job to go through and try to identify not just the yellow breaches, the suspected ones, but where new ones are in Shelby County. Interestingly, if you look at the kind of known issues that we have faced with regard to contamination, mainly at the land surface, this is what you get. It's not a pretty picture, but it does indicate the threats that we face due to our activity on the land in reference to these breaches. And the blue areas are some well fields of MOGW. There's also Millington, Carterville, Germantown, and Bartlett. They have their own well fields as well. But this is why quality is important to us. This is what we try to look at as well at Caesar. So to talk about some of the things that we do, when we at Caesar investigate our aquifer system, you can really break it up into three sections. Understanding what is happening above the breach, or above the clay, understand what is happening within the protective clay, and then what is below that in the Memphis aquifer. And we do activities in all three of these areas. I'm going to highlight just a few of those that we do. We'll start with the above. So understanding what's happening above the breach. One thing that we do is do investigations on groundwater surface water interaction. Why is this? Well, remember, breaches are not easily found. We got lucky. Someone drilled a well and you expect to hit clay and you don't. We can't go around Shelby County just punching wells everywhere. It's highly inexpensive. And it's random. But these river systems, what you can see on the left-hand side is a normal condition of how water moves and interchanges itself between the river and the aquifer. During the summertime, groundwater feeds the rivers. That's why the Wolf River, Loosahatchee River, and Nankana to a degree are flowing during the hot summer because it's receiving groundwater. And during the winter, which is right now, we just had this huge rain, all of our rivers are swelling, that water is pushing back. So in the wintertime, the river is pushing back into our groundwater supply. But we can use the river situation as a means of identifying nearby breaches, because on the right-hand side, the abnormal, during the summer, when the river should be gaining, collecting water, flowing, sometimes they lose, and they lose in certain sections. Well, that's because they're losing due to a breach nearby. So if we can look at these river systems and see where they may be losing during a time when it's really hot and they should be receiving water, it's like, somewhere nearby, near that river section, there may be a breach. So we use a lot of different types of instrumentation to investigate this groundwater surface water interaction. Both looking at the vertical exchange with water, but also discharge. These are some of our students out there doing this. And the bottom left is us with a device about to collect some discharge. And then on the right is one of our graduate students with all those buckets. This is something that Wolf River Conservancy helped us with, and other community members, in detecting this loss of water along the entire length of the Wolf River about 2 years ago or a year ago. Additionally, we look at recharge. This is atmospheric input into the system. This is how our groundwater is replenished. And recharge is very critical to the Memphis sand. There's that blue band across Tennessee. What is real interesting is this figure down at the bottom. It's the movement of water to get to replenish our aquifer. And really strange, if you're in Fayette County and you're in a high hill section, so Poplar turns into Highway 57 and runs a ridge line across Fayette County, it will take along that hilltop a drop of water 100 years to get below the roots, to go from below the roots down to the water table. That's a really long time. But you go a few hundred feet over to one of the gully sections where these have eaten down into through these intervening kind of thin clay layers and down to the aquifer much more closely. The recharge is seasonal, and it's like remarkable. Within less than 1,000 feet, you can go from 100 years to seasonal. And what it is starting to tell us is that when we look at protecting land or promoting development, we can begin to say what certain areas are more important to protect in order to keep that recharge occurring. And that's really a great piece of information for elected officials, for the community, for developers, so we don't hurt ourselves by hurting our recharge. So we'll move next into the clay. As I mentioned, finding a breach is tricky. We've been lucky. We drilled some wells and it's like, no clay. So how else can we find a breach? We can't drill wells everywhere. We can use geophysical methods. What this is we put listening devices on the ground and send energy into the ground. So if you've ever been to the movie theater and they start the movie and they do that little THX kind of surround sound and your ears kind of follow the sound and can pick up where it's coming from, same thing. These are listening devices on the ground. We put energy in, comes back, and these devices can depict this picture that you see in the middle, if it's green, red, blue. This was a location at Shelby Farms near south of Agro Center International. And it goes from the field to the Wolf River, and these vertical white lines are faults, shallow, not deep. So some of these breaches may be an old erosional scar from a river, but in this case, it could be caused due to a shifting of the subsurface. Not just using these methods, but we've been down on President's Island. The picture on the right is the old historic river pathways of the Mississippi River for the last 200 years. Now, it's flowing south for a lot longer than that, but for the data that the Corps of Engineers has had, you can imagine the 5th largest river in the world zipping through this area might have done something with any confining clay if it eroded down enough. So we suspect that there could be something down there. We use this one device, like a little lawnmower, and it was not as effective as we had hoped. But there is some new technology that is out there called airborne electromagnetics, and flies by helicopter. It has this little cool antenna, and it can penetrate the ground pretty well. And you can really get an idea of the subsurface. So this is a kind of like a paradigm shift for us. If we could use this technology, we're planning to view below the ground and really get a more continuous picture of what's going on and where these breaches may exist. Pretty neat technology. It's actually been around, but not used in this particular setting. So we'll move into the Memphis Aquifer. Another way that we try to understand where breaches could be, but also the source of water. Where is our groundwater coming from? Not just if it's in the Memphis Aquifer, but this also helps us with contaminant transport. And that's looking at water chemistry and age dating. So we can age date the water, and we can see that, young water, which we claim is 60 years old, if we see that in the Memphis Aquifer, that's a red flag, because the age of our water in the Memphis Aquifer is 2,000 to 3,000 years old. So sure enough, if you have a breach nearby, you're going to have this young water go in, and you're going to get ages as young as, we have some as young as 11 years old. And it's like, whoa, hey, that's not supposed to be that. There must be a breach nearby. So that helps us understand that. And we do that by extracting the water out using wells. We can also use chemistry, because if you imagine the Mississippi River, its chemistry is different than you would expect of what the water is in the Memphis Aquifer. So if we see chemistry like the Mississippi River in the Memphis Aquifer, then we know that somehow it's getting in. There's got to be a way that it's bypassing that clay and getting into our aquifer system. So that helps. The other way that we really look at this, our system is really complex. The wells, the rivers, the recharge, the pumping on and off, wells at different locations, really makes it complex. So the only really way to look at this is using computer models. So about 2 years ago, Caesar took on itself to build a very detailed groundwater model of Shelby County that is made freely available to the utilities for their use, for understanding our aquifer system, contaminant transport, and the like. And what's really interesting about this model is that it's dynamic. It is not something that we built and we put on the shelf and we're like, there it is, everybody use it. As we continue our research, we continually update the model. We're always putting better information into the model to improve its capability to help us understand what's going on. Lastly, something that Caesar really works hard on, Sarah Houston is our Associate Director for Education Outreach, and she works very closely with Kathy at Wolf River Conservancy. Both are on the call tonight, is our Education Outreach Program. We sorry. Oh, I guess that's it. Hang on. That is not all of it.
I think the slides are hidden.
Hidden. Okay, well, hang on. I'm going to fix this. Everybody just hang tight.
Sorry.
I want to make sure we show this. I don't know how to unhide.
If you right click, it should give you that option. Unhide, something.
Okay, here we go. And go back to this. And go up. And go to share. Voila. As our education outreach, we strive to provide public access to all of our research. That's, we're a university where we are supposed to, and we do, share our information with elected officials, different either environmental groups or utilities, community. So we do this in different ways. We give a lot of talks. We have provided fact sheets, such as on the TVA Allen fossil fuel plant to the state. We have given information at the request of Bahalia to them, the Bahalia pipeline, on the vulnerabilities that our aquifer have. And we have shared our concerns and suggestions to the community, to elected officials, to utilities, to the journalists, environmental agencies on those concerns. So this is something that we strive to do with our outreach program and share the concerns that we have regarding any potential threat to our drinking water supply. Another really, really great way that we do this, and Sarah's been doing a fantastic job on this, is our Water on Wheels mobile. It is a mobile classroom. Kids absolutely love it. Everything in there is tactile, touch and learn. We really move it to a lot of schools, but we also go to public events with this. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we've had a hiatus for about a year, but Sarah's tapping her feet, ready to go once, hopefully this fall, and get back into the swing of things. And then lastly, we are conducting a kind of countywide survey. In fact, Sarah just completed it, looking at how people value our water. What do they know about our water? What don't they know? And it helps us tailor our outreach to better address the unknowns that people have about our drinking water supply. So I mentioned this second opportunity to secure our future. And why is that? Well, I take it back to R.C. Graves. Here's one guy, and for whatever reason, decided to drill a well, went through some clay, and discovered the Memphis Aquifer and saved Memphis. He never knew that Memphis was going to be what it is now. He never knew all the amazing things that Memphis is. He was just getting water for his ice plant. And I feel that we're in the same situation. We are doing a lot of great, all of us, not just Caesar, but the community too, and Wolf River Conservancy, industries. We're all focused on the importance of our groundwater supply. And yeah, it is for our current understanding and need, but who knows about the unknowns in the years to come and the things that we're doing now that will help secure the future for others. And to me, that's what's so important about what we do now, all of us, is that this is our second opportunity, like R.C. Graves in 1886, to do something again, massive and important for our aquifer system. If you have any questions that I can't answer tonight or want more information, please check out our website or email us, and we will do our very best to get back in touch with you. But thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you so much, Brian. This is Kathy. Let me get my video on. We have a couple of questions, and I expect more will be coming in. In your opinion, is the aquifer safe, and do you fear the Vihelia pipeline?
So 2 questions. Is the aquifer safe? No, we have known vulnerabilities due to the presence of these breaches in our confining unit that can allow water from above that can pick up contaminants or just be of poor quality to get into our drinking water supply. So, it's a mindset from a long time ago of this contiguous clay unit is not there. We have these breaches. In addition to that recharge, we use a lot of water. Where is that needle on the sustainability? Are we doing good? Are we sustainable? Are we using too much? Indications are right now that water levels are actually going up, which is a good thing in the Memphis aquifer. To the Bahalia pipeline, we expressed to them, to anyone that has asked, the concerns that we have regarding the vulnerability of our aquifer system to threats of leaks or contamination. And we have suggested that there be regular monitoring, like very detailed monitoring of anything like that going in, and that because we don't know where all the breaches are, we have suggested that that to be sure that there's nothing in the area, that an investigation, subsurface investigation, be done to make sure there's no breaches proximal to the pipeline. And we've shared that with Bahalia and others. So yes.
Okay, it sounds like you've answered this question, which is what advice did Caesar give to Vihelia Pipeline LLC? Is there anything else you want to add to that?
That is, we provided our data on the geology. We provided them data on the our known current status of known or suspected breaches. We've provided them depth to water, both the shallow aquifer and the Memphis aquifer. We provided them some pictures for illustrating. I think I have one in here. To illustrate the concerns. I went way too fast. Hang on. This one down here at the bottom right produced a cartoon image showing the pipeline in red, but the breach, these concerns that we have, and the suggestions that I just mentioned. And then we've shared that same input or information with really anyone else that's asked. So. Okay.
Here's another question. Is the aquifer in a sustainable situation?
I don't know. We see the aquifer as a box. We know what we're pulling out, which is the wells, but we don't have a strong handle on what's going in. We had some wonderful corporations give us some funding toward recharge. International Paper, Keymore's, and Georgia Pacific gave us some equipment, and those dollars are going toward understanding the recharge piece of our aquifer system. State of Tennessee initiated a state water plan a year ago under Governor Haslam, and Governor Lee is supposedly picking it up. And in that plan is to investigate more on the recharge, which will help us know that needle of where are we on sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible to somehow fix the breaches?
That is a question that has been asked, and it is something that we are looking into.
Okay. This is a long, I'm not sure if this is comment, I'll just read what's here. 10 major breaches in North Memphis, Vesico, this must be Velsico, Farrell Paving Company, and then a list. I'll make sure you get this question by email. Over 115 years removing sand filter, Okay, I think that's a comment, not a question. Hazardous waste going in the drains from Nashville. So I'm not sure what the question is. If the person who submitted that could ask a question or else email Dr. Waldron later about that, because I'm not sure how he can respond.
So if they could ask a question but clarify what they're asking, that'd be helpful because I didn't follow that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to copy it and send it to you. Let's see. Do you have any books that you can recommend on the history of Memphis water or aquifers in general?
Let's see. Sarah Houston, she's on. She's been reading more on the history of that. The books that I know that I've used are more kind of like desert, things like that. But Sarah, familiar with the?
Yeah, actually, I just authored an article in the Tennessee Conservationist magazine, and that was actually just published this past month, and that lays out the history of the yellow fever, the water sources they were using at that time, the catalyst to using the Wolf River as a water source in the late 1800s, and then actually the discovery of the aquifer and the invention of the separated sewer system. So stormwater and household sewage in two different piping systems. That was all invented here in Memphis. So I will put a link in the chat to that article. It's a 4-pager that I think is pretty interesting, obviously. But yeah, they have it for free up on their website. So I'll put that in the chat right now. I think that's a good kind of starting.
Most of my knowledge of reading are the scientific journals. I don't think that probably bore a bunch of people, but there's some out there, yeah.
Okay, why was McKellar Lake / President's Island the focus of the survey project?
That goes back to the fact that the Mississippi River flowed over that area and deposited those sediments, even in the colors not shown on President's Island and Inslee Bottoms. So the thought behind it was, this is a massive river. It's the 5th largest in the world. Did it possibly erode down through that clay in a sediment and expose a connection between the upper sediments and the Memphis aquifer? So that's why we focused on that particular area. Another reason is that these geophysical methods, you can't, at least as we know right now, you can't just run through town. Remember the listening devices? Well, if you have too much noise around you, you can't pull out what's coming from underground. So in this area, really these geophysical tools that are on the ground, you have to avoid a lot of noise. So in these areas, it's very open and quiet. That's another reason why.
Okay. Here's another Vihelia pipeline question. How have the Vihelia pipeline people responded to you and your information, I guess?
They accepted it and they took it. They have, as they have had additional questions, they have asked us for clarification or what more we thought about the geology to that. Yeah.
Okay. Where is the large green area located in the middle of the map as noted on your breach map? Where's the large green area located? There you go.
So there's 2 of them. I'll just mention both. One of them in the middle that has kind of in the middle of the 240 loop. I think I can use my mouse. I think you can see that. That is University of Memphis, and that is near the MOGW Sheehan pumping station. The one to the southwest that kind of looks like, I don't know, Casper the Ghost, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, that is north of the airport. It's inside the loop, and it is near the Army depot.
Okay. If the Vihelia pipeline were to spring a leak, does that pose a threat to the aquifer? Does the answer depend on the location of a leak?
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
So let me elaborate. And first, let me go back and mention something about the map that you see. When we say a known breach, we know that we drill through it, but the shape, it's not that weird giant blob. We think that they're more linear features. So to go to the questions, the two that you just asked, if it springs a leak, is it a threat to the aquifer? Yes. Not just to the Memphis, but to the shallow. We don't want to forget the shallow aquifer, even though we don't pump from it. It is a source of water to the Memphis aquifer. And we don't want to contaminate it just because we don't use it. So yes, you know, anything that leaks, you saw the, what's the next map? You know, these are concerns that we have. Each one is a concern. And the other question was, does it depend where? Yes, it does. So the only known breach that we are aware of in Davis right now, even though we're still investigating this area, is to the west off the bluff line. And doing some calculations, the time of travel from the proposed Bahalia pipeline location to that breach in the is about 20 years. Then it has to go through it, and then it has to go into a production well. If a breach was closer to any of those threats, including the pipeline, then it would get in quicker because you have a shorter path to go. I have stated that, you know, yeah, we calculate 20 years. It doesn't mean that you need to wait 20 years to see if something happens. I have suggested that on at least an annual basis, that there would be a very good review or analysis of any potential leak going on along that line. So if everything leaks, you can't get around it. So that anything that happens can be caught well in advance before it ever gets to a breach.
Okay. Here's another question. Have city and county officials, that is the council, mayors, and commissioners, looked at your data?
If that person can clarify what they mean by data, I strongly suspect they mean Vihelia or data pertaining to Vihelia, but if it's other data, or I guess I could just answer both. I'll just answer both. How about that? Yes, they have looked at our research. We are trying to provide them some more information coming up soon, we hope, on just general research that we do. And then as it pertains to the pipeline itself, well, back up. So we also talked to county, city councilmen or council members on an annual basis about our groundwater system and what's going on. And Sarah has done a great job when we're allowed to do a public forum and present information about what our findings are to that. So we're really trying in multiple ways to do that. So to the point of, on the Vihelia side, I've talked to state representatives. I have answered questions from elected officials. I have a meeting coming up with Mayor Strickland next week. So yes, as we are asked, we are very open with what information we have, what data that we have, and then from that, they can make their decision about what they do.
here's something, another topic. What is the status of the TVA draw on the aquifer?
TVA draw, so probably the pumping.
I suppose.
You know, to my knowledge, that those wells are used for backup, and that they are receiving their water from Memphis Light Gas and Water.
Okay. How many abandoned wells are there in Memphis and Shelby County, and what risks do they pose?
Good question. All these have been good questions. Abandoned wells. You know, I don't have a number. And I'd hate to just put one out there. And I would say that usually when a well is abandoned, there are regulations for abandoning it properly, and that is filling it in with concrete or a bentonite clay. And interesting. So do they pose a threat? If they're not closed properly, yes. Do I know of any abandoned wells that exist that are not closed, that are just kind of like random? Well, to be honest, 2 of them. I think they're shallow, but our recommendation on abandoning wells has been to the health department, and we're trying to work with them on it, is don't fill it full of concrete. The reason being is that if the casing is still in having integrity, we'd love to use it for research, because that is our window of vision down into the aquifer for taking samples, for measuring water levels. And, you know, we really struggle to understand, you know, the shallow aquifer and its water levels because of its interaction with the Memphis, because there's not a lot of wells. And it really hurts us because we lose that kind of control to draw these water level contours. So we really are hoping that with the Shelby County Health Department, we can come up with a plan to use abandoned wells for research.
Okay, that's interesting. Is the aquifer used for the Arkansas rice field area?
So in Arkansas and Mississippi, it's called the Sparta. And depending upon how geology kicks in, it'll change names. The answer is yes. In eastern Arkansas, they mainly use the Mississippi River alluvial aquifer. So over here on the left-hand side, they use this upper brown blue. The concern has been that as that aquifer goes dry, or more so its saturation, the amount of water in it gets really, 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 really low. Farmers need water, so they go deep, they drill deep, and they drill deep and they go into the Sparta or the Memphis aquifer. That mainly happens on the west side of Crawley's Ridge. The east side over here, due to the connection with the Mississippi River, it really provides some water to the shallow, as well as some of the rivers like the St. Francis. But yes, and that is something that we are trying to deal with on a regional level, because this is a shared resource, and we've got to figure out how we all can use it without hurting it.
Okay, another question. Did I understand correctly that the recharge part of the system is primarily in Tennessee? And if so, would that give our state some precedence in legal status or not?
So recharge to our groundwater system occurs in multiple ways. It can occur directly by precipitation. That's the blue band that you see. It can occur through surface water bodies, rivers, lakes, things like that. In eastern Arkansas, they have talked about on on-farm storage where farmers will take a field and convert it to a pond, and that can leak water through the base into the shallow Mississippi River alluvial aquifer. The other way that recharge occurs is through these clay layers. Granted, when you're in art class and you get this clay, it doesn't seem like water really gets through it, but it does. It just gets through really slowly. So that's another way that you can have recharge. So those are the three ways. It doesn't mean that Arkansas, the Sparta Aquifer, gets no water, except from Tennessee. It does get water through the inner aquifer exchange, and in some places where these river systems can go through that Mississippi River alluvium and sit above the Sparta. As to legal precedents, I'm not a lawyer, but probably not. But I'm not a lawyer.
Another topic. How do you feel about water bottling companies coming to Shelby County?
How I feel is different. I would say that to me, I promote. I think promoting industry and jobs is good. I go back to that needle concept. Where are we on sustainability? Whether you're a bottling company or some other industry or a farmer, whatever's using water, if we tilt that needle in the wrong direction and we start becoming unsustainable, I think we all have a place to play in changing that. So I guess to answer the question, I wouldn't buy it in Memphis because I could get it on my tap, but I guess someone else might somewhere else. I've always said, if the best thing about a bottle of water in Memphis is that you can keep using the plastic bottle and fill it up at the tap, because like the best water you got.
Yeah, we've got great water, it's true.
That's wonderful.
Here's a nice question. What can citizens advocate for to ensure Caesar gets the resources it needs and work toward the implementation of regulations needed to protect the aquifer?
So it's a two-parter. To aid us, in 2018, I think it was, the city council and the community. I remember walking with Wolf River Conservancy and Protect Our Aquifer door to door with city council, and I was there providing data. To request that rate increase of 1.05% to the water bill to fund research, and it equates to about 50 cents a month, which is not a lot of money. To some it is. I won't deny that. But 18 cents a month, and it produced money each year, about $1 million. It was going to go over 5 years. There's something that Jerry Collins, the past president of MLGW, helped initiate to fund research to look at our groundwater system. Supporting that is a way to enable us to do our job, to provide information about our aquifer system to the citizens that are paying for this, and to elected officials and to utilities. The second part of that is more of the governance, and that is supporting the elected officials and your city council people to show support for understanding our groundwater system, protecting our groundwater system, things of that nature. Yeah, I think that would be the way to do it.
Okay. This is an interesting question. Are there any ideas as to purchasing areas in Fayette County and elsewhere to conserve recharge?
We have looked at a EPA program. EPA is Environmental Protection Agency program for sole source water protection. And at the time that very first came out, which was in early 2000, we didn't fit the bill because the Mississippi River is next door and has a lot of water. So we couldn't really claim sole source, but it would be something to go back and look at to see if the regulations have changed because of the difference in water quality between the two and the cost of converting from Memphis Aquifer to Mississippi River. The Wolf River Conservancy, I don't want to speak for Keith or Kathy, you can probably speak better to it, y'all's programs for purchasing land. Keith or Kathy, y'all want to talk to that? Or
Keith, if you're on, you might want to talk about our role as a land trust.
I'd love to. The Wolf River Conservancy follows a strategic conservation plan led by Ryan Hall, our Director of Conservation, and it is focused on protecting lands that are primarily recharge areas. Much of those lands are in Fayette County. Last year, we protected 1,000 additional acres. To date, since our founding, we've protected 18,000 acres of land solely to protect water and wildlife. And our board of directors is committed to continue doing that. I mean, that is our sole core mission at the Conservancy, is protecting land, just as you described.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, here's another question for you, Brian, which is how accurate is pipeline leak detection technology?
It depends on the technology that you use. I am not a expert on pipeline, oil pipelines, or even gas. I do know that there is a device called a pig, and it's a device like a torpedo that goes inside the pipe, and it's pushed by the pressure of the media that's in it, whether it's natural gas or oil or whatever. And it rides inside the pipe, and it can detect pinhole leaks. It can detect issues with your welding. It can detect thinning of your pipe material, the diameter. It can detect corrosion. And I only know about it because we work a lot with Memphis Light Gas and Water, and their gas division ran that recently and some of their transmission lines. And so I was reading up on it. It has been my recommendation to whoever that I've spoken to that be one of those means of checking the Vihelia pipeline or even other pipelines that we have in Shelby County for that level of detection.
Okay, is an abandoned well like a small breach because it penetrates the clay layer?
So if something can get in the pipe, yes. But on the outside the pipe, when you install a well, when you drill through the clay and into the Memphis Aquifer, you backfill the outside of that well with a clay called bentonite clay. Bentonite clay is really cool because when it gets wet, it grows to twice its size. It's like one of those cool little sponges you have when you're a kid and you throw in the water, it turns into a giant dinosaur. It's kind of like that. And it really seals it up. So it does not mean that every well is perfectly sealed. We call that leaking along the annulus. And it's just those things that we also look at. But just because it's abandoned doesn't mean that it has a poor, that its outside is poorly confined.
Okay. Here's someone who has heard about chromium soil contamination from an old factory and is wondering where that is and if it's near a breach.
So the hexavalent chromium, if you've ever seen Aaron Brockovich, it's that. And that came from the Smalley Piper plant, and that is in Carterville. And that has been under investigation, has been under cleanup by EPA. It continues to be monitored, and the the contaminant movement away from that site down gradient, downstream, is being monitored and mapped. And can you repeat the question? I don't know if I answered all of it.
She is wondering where that is, where that contamination is, and if it's near a breach.
Is it near a breach? So on this particular map, see right here, you see my mouse, you see Germantown, and Carterville is down in this blue area. So Carterville is actually in the recharge zone. That is where that clay is absent. So I wouldn't say it's a breach. I just say that the Memphis Aquifer, the clay above the Memphis Aquifer is missing or spotty in that location.
Well, related to that then, are you concerned about the fact that the last 20 miles of the pipeline are in an unconfined area where there is no protective clay layer?
Yes, and we expressed that to Bahalia in 2019 and everybody since then.
Okay. I wanted to pause for just a minute and tell you that it's 7:36. We have 33 more messages. So I'm going to let you decide how many more you would like to take, or if you'd like to take all of them.
I am happy to take whatever anyone would like.
Okay, well, we'll keep going then until 8. Now, of course, folks are free to leave if they want. Is that too late for you, Brian?
No, it's
okay. All right, I'll keep going. Okay, any comparison studies conducted on the east side of the river, West Memphis area, to demonstrate the difference of their water quality versus ours, that is near President's Island? Any resources you would recommend for reviewing these findings?
To my knowledge, there are no studies investigating the water quality of the Memphis Aquifer on the west side of the Mississippi River as compared to on the east side on our side. We have, on water quality, we have looked at water levels to look at the shift in the shallow aquifer water level and the shift in the Memphis Aquifer water level as the Mississippi River goes up and down. Part of the reason why we don't have that is because West Memphis does not get their drinking water from the Memphis sand. They go deep into the Fort Pillow. That is the one below the Memphis Aquifer. So they go deeper.
Okay. Okay, here is a maybe difficult question. I've seen that Caesar took money from the pipeline company. This has been used to cast doubt on Caesar's recommendations. What was the money used for?
The money was presented to us by Vihelia, and we went to the University of Memphis and said what was happening. We expressed our concern due to the potential controversy. And we only accepted the money from Bahalia if it came as a gift. And what that means in university terms is no strings attached. We are not beholding to anything. It's a straight up, here it is, that's it. And the only request from Bahalia was to use it for education. So we have used it for education outreach. It is being used to fund the WOW and programs that we write for teachers to use in the classroom with the kids that matches state standards. It allows us to put information on our website for the public to consume. It allows us to develop presentations and give talks to people. So we use it for public outreach. We have never been asked for anything different, but that's the only way we accepted it, was if it came with no strings attached.
Right, and just to add to that, the water survey that was mentioned, that was all funded with Vihelia dollars, and we partnered with the sociology research department at U of M to do that survey the right way. We also awarded participant gift cards to up to 10 participants. So that was all funded through the private dollars to hopefully be a catalyst for a statewide survey project to support Tennessee H2O. So we're hoping that that can have a broader reach in the future. So in our whole website, I'll put the link in there, our whole website rebuild was all funded off of Vihelia dollars. So everything you see there came through that.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Let's see, do you support the exportation of our water? I think that follows another question about bottling our water.
Yes, interesting. I remember a long time ago, one person wanted to bring a giant tanker up the Mississippi River and put millions of gallons in it and then take it across the pond called the Atlantic Ocean to give water away. You know, I don't mean to sound contradictory about a water bottling or export, but when I think of export, I think of that when I was younger. And no, I would not, I would be against that. That's no. Very personal. This is not Brian Waldron, University of Memphis. Y'all be careful. Is Brian Waldron? No.
Okay, well then here is another personal question. In your opinion, is the Vihelia pipeline too risky for Memphis?
That is, I have expressed the Caesar's concerns on that. And I think those are valid concerns. I will tell you this too. There's pipelines in Memphis, and I'm not saying that to give a yay or nay for another one or taking one out. What I will say is that whether you move a pipeline up, down, left, or right, you will not get away from the vulnerability that our aquifer system has to contamination because of our breaches. So, you know, we overarchingly have concerns regarding these breaches in our confining clay.
Okay. Have any MLG&W wells been shut down because of contamination?
It would probably be best if MLGW answered that one.
If a pipeline is prone to a leak, how do you clean up oil or any other pollution in the groundwater or aquifer?
There's two types of constituents when you talk about this. One's called a L-NAPL, one's called a D-NAPL. What it means is that the L means it's light, which means it floats on water, like gasoline. And one is, the D means dense, which means it's denser than water and sinks like oil, the crude oil. So each one poses a different method for addressing it. And there are a variety of what we call remediation techniques that you can use. It does depend upon the scale. Depends on, was it really localized? Did you contain it real quick? Or is it really broad as to what you can do? For example, sometimes you can do pump and treat. What that means is that you take the contaminated water out, you put it into a device on the land surface, you clean it, and you put it back in. The better thing to do when you put it back in is to put it down gradient, downward of where the contaminant is, so it kind of builds a water wall and pushes it back so it doesn't move any further. Other ways are using bacteria, bugs. Some bugs like oil, and they can go in and clean it. There's companies like in Memphis, InSafe, they're world headquarters here, and they are keen on remediation techniques. So they probably employ a lot of them.
Okay. Someone trying to pin you down. Are you for or against the pipeline?
Moving on.
Okay.
Your question.
All right. Let's see, I'm looking here. Let's see, I'm looking for a new question. These are all old questions, so maybe I have reached the end. I think I've actually reached the end of questions. Someone type a mess. If I've missed your question, go ahead and type it into the chat box because I'm not seeing a new one here. A lot of folks are just thanking you for your good work and for your presentation tonight. At this point, I am going to turn this back over to Mark so he can, or to Keith, I'm not sure which, who are going to wrap us up. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy and Sarah. Thank you both for being here tonight. Very informative. You know, we're so fortunate to have an institution like Caesar in our community that has research and helping us all protect our clean drinking water. So thank you for the work that you do. We hope everyone enjoyed tonight's program. I know I did. And you can look for additional programs such as tonight or all of our activities on the wolfriver.org website. And of course, our Wolf River Restoration Series, we have activities this weekend and over the next few weeks. And again, we want to acknowledge Brother International as our presenting sponsor, but we also want to say thank you to all of our benefactors, including Bank of America, Buckman, Crawford Howard Private Family Foundation, FedEx, the Griffles Foundation, the Hyde Family Foundation, International Paper, and the Marine Container Technologies. Thank you all for your support. And remember, if you support the Wolf River Conservancy and the work that we do and want to protect land in our community to protect water, you should support the Wolf River Conservancy. And you can do that very easily at wolfriver.org. Thank you all for this evening. Thank you.